Arthur J. Art Williams Jr., 51, born in Chicago in 1972. Your mother was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, and your father, Arthur Williams Sr., did time for auto theft before abandoning your family. After your father left, your family experienced homelessness before ending up in the projects in Bridgeport, Chicago at 31st and Halston. Your sister committed suicide by jumping out of a window, and your brother developed mental illness as well. You infamously counterfeited the 1996 $100 bill and was the subject of the book, The Art of Making Money by Jason Kirsten. Your notoriety came from being the first to break all the security features within the 1996 issued $100 bill. You served 12 years in various prisons throughout your life. And I've heard you refer to yourself as one of the greatest counterfeiters that's ever lived. Yeah. Welcome to VladTV, my brother.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it.
No doubt, no doubt. So, let's talk about your beginnings, man. When people think about hardships and struggles and coming apart and the projects and all that kind of shit, they do not have your face in mind.
Yeah.
What was it like for you as a young white kid growing up in, this environment in the projects, just dealing with the struggles at very, very early ages? What was it like? And when did it begin? When did you become aware, I guess, of like, I'm in a bad way?
Well, we grew up in my earlier years, we lived in the suburbs. Carpentersville, Elgin, a little bit in Schaumburg. And so, when we were out there wasn't gangs, crime, all that's drugs. Like it was a little bit, but not like, Chicago, of course, So when my dad took off, here it is, I'm about 11 years old, living in Schaumburg, going to a mostly white school, right? And then when my dad took off, my mom ended up in the mental hospital. We ended up going to foster care. And when she got out, we ended up at the Salvation Army, homeless. We stayed there for about 2 months and then ended up in the projects. So I was probably about 12 when we ended up in the projects. That process took about, probably about 4 or 5 months from the time my father left to the time we ended up, homeless and there. And, from a kid from the suburbs to the South Side streets, it was, culture shock to say the least. And, I had to deal with, all the other things that inner city youth had to deal with, gangs, crime, drugs everywhere. It's just, it was a tough time. It was a tough time. And then on top of it, to have your mother who was bipolar, she would go in and out of the hospital probably about once a year. Mm-hmm. And, and here it was when we lived in the suburbs, I was actually in like Excel classes, right? For school, accelerated classes. And then when we ended up moving to Chicago and I went to school, it was like something it was crazy how the schools were set up back then and the gang stuff. And so I just chose not to go to school anymore. And just started hitting the streets, stealing cars, doing dumb things. And then when I was about 15 is when I met my mom's friend who brought me into counterfeiting, which was the first big life-changing moment for me, But
did you know that this friend of your mom's was a counterfeiter or any kind of criminal, whatever? Like,
no, because on where we lived, there was a little diner called Ed's Snack Shop on 31st and Halsted, and they had, you had police going there, aldermen's going there, mob guys going there, and my mom was a waitress, so I would go in there to get a burger or a shake, and I'd meet them. So I didn't, and people don't just, in my neighborhood, they didn't really, broadcast what they were doing, right? But you could tell who's who, right? And for me, you know, from the time we hit the city, you know, we were super poor. I remember going without water or hot water for like 2 years because my mom just couldn't pay the bills. And I started, you know, breaking into parking meters, you know, at like 13 so I could get groceries for my family. So for me, the streets were more, I was always trying to figure out how to make money. And it wasn't so I could flex or anything. It was just so I could take care of my brother, sister, my mom, you know? So there was it was a survival instinct for me that kicked in on the streets. And then I got arrested for stealing a car. My mom was working. She couldn't come sign me out. And so he said he would come get me. And when he came and picked me up at the police station, we walked back to the diner, and he just talked to me about, you know, that I was smarter than this, and that if I was to do if I was to do something, that I needed to do the right thing, which ended up being counterfeiting for him, right? Right? You know, that was the right thing. But when he brought me in, you know, it was fascinating for one, right? Because, you know, as a poor kid, you're all, you know, at least me, I always daydreamed and imagined, you know, having suitcases of money or finding a suitcase of money, you know, to get out of that poverty. And now here I meet a cat that could show me how to print it.
This is like 87, so you were like 15 or so,
15,
right?
16, around there, you know. It was I was still young. And
what does a 15-year-old do with the skill to print money?
Well, shit, I didn't get that skill till way later, man. You know,
okay.
But it started there, right? Because he allowed me to apprentice with him, and he was doing it the old way. He had the AB Dick offset press. He had the plate burners. We were mixing inks. Like, it was fascinating. There was a process to it, you know. And so I got to learn how to do those things. I didn't ever reach I didn't ever reach a place with him where I was printing on my own. For one, he wouldn't let me. I was more or less just his help in his eyes. And then he ended up vanishing after about 9 months, 10 months, you know. And
vanishing?
Yeah, just disappeared, you know. That was it, gone, you know. And
never saw him again?
No, never saw him again. Yeah. I mean, that happened
to cats. Any ideas what the hell happened to him?
That happened to cats in my neighborhood, man. Cats disappeared all, you know, just
it
things.
Was a predominantly Italian neighborhood, wasn't it?
Well, you had Italian and Irish and Asian on the east side of Halstead, and then you had Hispanic and Puerto Rican and whites, but a little bit more of a lower middle class, right? And then even at that time, even poverty stricken over there. In the Italian area, that was like all the rich people, you know, and that's where he was from, and that's where he started bringing me into that world when I was young, and so yeah, he ended up, you know, something happened to him. I tried to find him. I'd go over to the place and be locked up. I'd ask my mom if she seen him. You know, it was always, you know, she was worried. But like I said, in my neighborhood back then, there was still a lot of mob stuff going on. You know, it was kind of like at its end, but people still. I think one of the last mob hits was in my neighborhood. It was right off 28th and Low. Ronnie Jarrett, one of my friends, Ronnie Jarrett, they killed his dad. That was in my neighborhood, and that was like the last mob hit. But you know why he disappeared? Either there was heat on him, or, you know, something happened to him. You know, I mean, there's no telling what happened, but he was gone. And so from that point on, I went back to the streets for a couple years.
When you were growing up in your neighborhood, you were around a lot of knockaround guys. For the layman, that mob guys. We were around a lot of mob guys.
Yeah. Well, a lot of my friends that I grew up with, their fathers, you know, were into stuff, right? So I got to meet people that, you know, that had things going on, and, you know, some of their sons would attempt to get into it, but by the time by the time we were getting older, that stuff had kind of started dying out. Everyone was getting arrested, right? But I got a chance to spend some time with Jerry Scalise. He stole the marble diamond.
Jerry Scalise.
Yeah, he's a good dude, man. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that old man,
Wow.
I love him. Yeah, he was great, And, I got to learn some things from him. Not criminally, more, he was like a philosopher,
So more ideological.
Yeah, just the way to be, And he was an interesting character for sure. So I had the chance to be around some pretty, high level street guys through my time.
Right. And that's why I wanted to tap back into that. One, because people commonly have the perception based upon Hollywood's tropes that mob guys are kind of blunt objects.
No.
And you stated that you'd learned a great deal from being around these guys, and that they're not as dumb as mainstream would like to perpetuate. So I thought that was interesting, and wanted to ask you, like, what was some of the things that you learned from that experience? Because I can relate, right? So I wanted to get your insight into what it was that you were able to take away, what value you were able to take away and use along the way to help you to be successful in the areas you were.
Well, a lot of those cats, even though they fell because people were turning on one another, there was a lot that didn't turn. Right. There were a lot that got to drift off and finish out their life, But you only hear on TV the ones that were the turncoats, right?
Right.
Man, there were a lot of them. Okay. And, there was a big thing about doing what you say, right? Because in that world, if you didn't do what you say, you had problems. Right.
It wasn't you were to lose your head.
Yeah, you didn't go get a lawyer. There wasn't no hiring an attorney, man. You had problems. So, even now, I in the art world and in what I do now, I use a lot of things that I learned on the streets, a lot of things that I learned in prison, I use now, right? And just like simple things. I remember he used to tell me, you could always tell how a cat's going to treat you by the way he treats his significant other.
Yes.
Right? If you're sitting at a table and dude's disrespecting his significant other, you better believe at some point he's going to do it to you. Right?
You better believe it.
And so if I'm sitting at a table and I see a man treating his wife or his girlfriend in a way that's just like, I'll step quick. He'll never even know. I won't even tell him why. I'm out of there, man.
That's right.
And so it's just little things like that, but I believe they've kept me safe, Again, like, don't let people see what you have, I mean, there was street guys that did get gaudy, right? I'll even say gaudy, right?
Right.
But then there's a lot of street guys I know, they're driving an old truck, man. You don't even know they got
That's right.
2 bags of cash sitting in the wall right now,
That's right.
So,
That's right.
Like, I was more on the quiet side of the streets in the sense that I like to ghost in, ghost out, wasn't trying to get into no drama. Still am. I'm still the same, I move in, I move out, and just now it's just with a different product, my art, right? So, being around them, it taught me to be respectful, right? I'm not flashy with my mouth unless it's needed, and then it's really not even going to be much said, really, from me. I'll let you know how I'm feeling, and then that's it, man. There's no more argument about it. It's just, this is what it is. So I've learned to be stern, right? And that helped me when I was in prison, right? To not back down, and then I learned how to be brilliant too. A lot of them cats, man, pulled off some of the biggest heists there ever were.
Yes.
They didn't do that because they were stupid.
Right.
Right? They were able to do that because they had a genius about them. Yeah. That if they would have applied it to a doctor or a lawyer or this, they could have done that. Just like, I know I probably could have been doing something of that nature right? Also, but our energies were diverted by the streets, right?
Right.
So, those times were, they were interesting,
Right.
but it taught me to stay calm in tense situations. A lot of things.
Key.
Yeah.
Key. That's key. A lot of guys not getting that, and then coming through their criminality, into the inevitable tense situations.
Yeah.
And then finding out that they weren't prepared. Yeah. And then doing things that they never thought they would do. Were you in gangs during that period? Because I remember. I remember a long time ago you telling me you got shot.
Yeah.
One time.
Yeah. Well, I got shot in my neighborhood, and that's what caused me to leave. And I went to Texas, and I went down to Texas when I was about 19, and I came back to Chicago a couple times, but when I was about 20, I got back to Texas, and I didn't come back to Chicago for about 9 years.
Mm.
So I was kind of done with the city, man. Once I got shot, I was like, man, I'm out of here. There ain't no reason.
What led to you being shot?
Huh?
What led to that? What led to you being shot?
Just the neighborhood stuff, in the wrong neighborhood at the wrong time, and
were you affiliated with a particular group?
I mean, there was, it was, I lived in a neighborhood where there was a particular group. I didn't necessarily hang out with them, but just because I was in that neighborhood,
that's right.
They had a problem with me,
I
mostly hanged on Taylor Street when I was young, which was another Italian neighborhood. And then we moved out of 31st when I was about 17. We moved to 31st and Wells. And so, but my neighborhood was crazy back then. If you were in the wrong area, it didn't matter what you were a part of, you could get hit, So
right.
So that's what led me to leave Chicago. I was just done with it. And
that was 94. So you were like 22 when you moved to Texas?
Well, I actually maybe a little younger. I was probably because I was going back and forth from the time I was like 18, 19, 20. And then when I was about 20, 21, I stayed in Texas.
What about Texas? How Texas? Why Texas?
Well, my mom was from there. Yeah, so my mom was from Texas. My dad was from Chicago. And so we always went back and forth until my dad took off on us, So Texas was like home to me, and I had family down there. And my grandfather had just died, so he had left us a little house. And so my mom said I could stay there. And I basically stayed there for like the next 9 years. Yeah.
So what was like, what were you into? Because you got arrested in 94 for second-degree burglary.
Yeah.
In Texas, right?
Yeah. Well, that was the problem with me. I was still acting like I was from Chicago when I went to Texas. You couldn't take the Chicago out of me, man, And I got caught up in some dumb shit and ended up doing like 2 years on that. I think it was about 2 years, a little over maybe.
Right. And so when you that would be 96. So that was the same year the U.S. Treasury issued that currency with the new design security features aimed at specifically at countering counterfeit.
That's when I got out. I got out right that year, man.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. So apparently you somehow found your way back to, the guy that you had, the original mentor.
Yeah.
You called him Da Vinci.
Yeah.
You named him Da Vinci, right?
Yeah.
So you returned back to the skill set that Da Vinci had given you, and this counterfeit bill that was supposed to be, this bill that the Treasury Department had released was supposed to be like, uncircumventable, like So it included it was the new $100 bill, which is one of the most frequently counterfeited denominations, and you perfected a new note so convincingly that the money passed through gambling casinos as well as banks.
Yeah, it'd go through some good things.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah,
and of course, we've known each other forever, so of course we've had these conversations, and I've always been like really fascinated. And one, you were very young. Two, you had no formal education.
No.
Right. And you were quoted as saying, I figured out how to create something that the government spends hundreds of millions to protect. I figured out how to do it with household items and make it look just as good. Like household items, bro.
Well, I said household items in the sense of things that you could get real cheaply.
Right.
Right. I mean, I used directory paper for the paper, right? That was in every household across the country in the yellow pages,
Right.
like it was a household. You had everyone had yellow pages back then. So for me,
so how'd you do it?
well, it was a long process, right? Trial and error. I mean, so when I'll tell you what happened. So when I was in prison for that burglary, that second degree burglary, I wanted to change. I didn't want to get. I had already been. I had left Chicago, and that time I spent a lot of time reading, and during that reading, I realized that I really wanted to become different when I got out. I didn't want to keep. I for surely didn't want to steal from no one, right? Like I felt real guilty about that. I didn't like the way it made me feel, and so. I was reading a lot of spiritual books. I read, man, gosh, I read from Christianity to Islam to Buddhism. I started studying all the different religions. I just didn't stay on one. I wanted to read all the different ones and get an understanding to what is truth, right? So that was what I spent that time doing. And then I was studying martial arts. I had Bruce Lee's book. I was studying his philosophy. So that first prison sentence was like a little college for me, but it was mostly, just learning about religion and philosophy and things like that. And when I got out of prison, I took I gave my Bruce Lee book away to my cellie. Me and him used to practice that shit in our cell. We were crazy, man. We had our own prison martial arts, man, and he still had a lot of time left. So I left him the book. And when I got out, I wanted to get a new one. And so my girl, Natalie, she took me to the Barnes & Noble and we get the book and we paid for the book with $100 bill. She gave me the 100. I had no money. And I seen them mark it with the pen and just throw it in the drawer. They didn't even look at the bill. They literally just threw the bill down, marked it, tossed it in the drawer, and that was it. And right away. And here it is. I'm not even 2 days out of prison, and that criminal mind kicked in immediately. And I'm like, wow. For one, I was fascinated by the new money, but then I was really excited about the way that they checked it, because they didn't look at it. They didn't inspect it. They just completely trusted that marker. So I knew that if I could figure out that paper that made it mark, man, I was going to be like the mint, So that's what I did. I first did try to do the right thing. I went and got a job. I was building, I think it was pole barns, it was like horse barns and stuff, because I was in Texas and they were doing that type of stuff down there. And, but it wasn't steady work. And so, my mind went, to the money where I was like, okay, I'm not stealing. I could do it by myself, which really, that was one of the big things that I liked about the counterfeiting, is that I didn't need no one around me, right?
No team necessary.
No team necessary in the beginning, right? Because you're alone. You're making the plates, you're making the paper, you're mixing the ink. I don't, I could walk into a place, and set up shop and walk out with a briefcase of hundreds.
How many would you run? Like, what amount equivalent would you run?
I didn't ever get over 500,000 at a time because I just didn't want to have too much around. And I would sell it in chunks at 30 cents on the dollar, right?
Who were your main? $500,000, that's a lot of paper for one person by themselves to produce, let alone move with.
Oh,
and
no.
Circulate, because you got to bust it down.
Yeah, no, that was the beautiful thing. So when I was in Chicago, I used to play basketball and I would travel all over the city, playing with different, nationalities. I'd go over to 47, play ball over there. I'd go to Ukrainian Village. And when I came back from Chicago from my long layoff, all those cats have grown up and now they were on the streets doing things. So I had outlets like no other person, man. I had my Russian boys. I had my cartel. I mean, I had people in play, but it didn't start like that. I mean, when I first started making the money, it was just, we would spend it, right? Me and my girl, I would drive, we'd hit a mall. She'd go in there and drop something, drop 100 in every store. We would drop all the stuff off at the Salvation Army box, give it away, and then move on to the next one.
The things that you would buy after you bust 100 down, you would so you'd buy something that was maybe $15, $20, and you get the $85 back in real currency, I guess. Right? And then the stuff you bought, you would just go to like the Salvation Army, just give it away?
Yeah, because it'd be too much. It'd be too much to fill in the car, and it looked like...
But so much toilet paper you can really buy.
Yeah, there's only so much toilet paper you can buy, dog.
Right.
So we would give it away. That way we didn't have all this merch in the car, just in case we got pulled over.
Right.
And we did that for a while, and then from there,
the malls and shit like that.
Yeah,
did you hit high-end shops buying
everything,
expensive clothes, jewelry, shit like that?
Not really. I wasn't really that. We didn't really do that too much, Like I said, I think my upbringing prevented me probably from doing really intense shit. Maybe that's why I had a long run, right? And what I mean by that is like I haven't ever really been into all the fancy things. I was trained to survive, Now I like a car and I like shoes and I like things, So, but I'm not one who's obsessed over that stuff. I'm obsessed over making the money. Right. I like to see my money stack up.
And that's from the hardships that you experienced as a child, the abject poverty. Yeah. So far.
Yeah. And the more I have, the more secure I feel, right?
Meech was like that.
Yeah. That same way, man. I'm not, like I said, where I get my security is if I could look over and I see a bag full of money, that's where my security's at. I don't watch or,
That's a poor person's mindset.
Yeah. Like I was always taught, you don't ever want cats to know what you have because they'll try to take it.
That's right.
Right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So I try to fly low under the radar as low as I can, and even then.
Your business, not show business.
Exactly. Yeah. But, so, I had a run. We ended up getting jammed up.
How long was your run?
I mean, man, pretty much, I got jammed up probably about 3 years into that. And then I got in trouble in Alaska with my dad.
So you and your dad did kind of reconnect at a certain point, right? You and Art Sr.?
Yeah. But it didn't work out too well, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, how long had it been since you and he, because he'd abandoned you guys, and then you went through the things you went through. Where was he during this period when you robbing, like breaking into cars, stealing cars, breaking into meters and shit? Where was he during this period?
He was in Alaska. Yeah, he took off to Alaska. Yeah, he was in Chickaloon, Alaska. It was about, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes east of Anchorage. Yeah.
He was deep in Alaska.
Yeah, he's deep in Alaska.
How the hell did you find him? How did you know he was in Alaska?
Man, it was crazy. So when I ended up getting jammed up at the House of Blues with some money.
Right.
Yeah.
You and your
It was my
ex-wife's
wife's
sister.
Yeah.
So how? Because I've heard you say that you prevailed upon your sixth sense. That we've talked about this. I used to tell you how when I got a sense of something, I would just. This is back when you were still in the joint, and my son had told you and my son were locked up together, which is how we met all those many years ago, and I told you that I had been in the game and survived or whatever, and And we talked about that sixth sense, that thing that says, hey, yo, leave. I don't care how good the party's going, how good the money's flowing. It's time to break out right now.
Yeah.
And you said that you used that and that you relied on that and that you'd never been caught basically red-handed. But in the instance at the House of Blues, you got jammed with a bag.
Yeah, I got jammed with the bag.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what happened with that?
Man, well, so I was going up there to do a deal, and we were at the House of Blues at the bar, and me and the dude were talking, but his family had came in from Russia. And so he said he was throwing a party for them, wanted me to come over. And he asked if we could do what we were going to do tomorrow, the next day. And so I was like, yeah, sure. But I wasn't going to go to the party, And so the bartender overheard us talking and thought we were going to be partying up in the room. And I guess he was an informant for the cops, a detective. And what happened is he alerted them. So when I came back to the room later that evening with my wife's sister, the cops were waiting for us. And what happened is we go up into the room, and the room we had, it was a suite. So I was in the bedroom, she was in the living room, and then there was a long hallway. And I was laying down. Someone knocked, said it was security. She opened the door and the cops bum rushed the room. They ended up finding the money. Went through some processes. The Secret Service showed up.
So they knew that
they didn't know.
Counterfeiter?
At first they thought that it was drug money, right? At first they thought it was drug money. The cops found it was like $80,000. And the cop, when he was counting it, and lo and behold, I mean, it can't even, you can't plan, this is crazy how I am, but he happened to be a banker. The cop used to be a former bank teller, man.
Oh,
Go figure that one. Yeah, so while he's counting the money, man, he started just feeling funny about it, called the Secret Service. Secret Service came, and they said, oh yeah, this is the guy we've been looking for, right? And so they had me, man. They had me red-handed. It was the first time.
So the cop that was the former banker, he feels the bread and it starts to occur to him to call the Secret Service. What were you guys doing? Could you see this happening? Like,
I'm right there.
In front of them?
Yeah, I'm right there. He's talking crazy to me. Well, like I said, at first they thought it was drug money. And so they wanted me to, they were talking about, you need to tell us, you're going to go through with the deal. I'm like, man, I don't know what deal you're talking about, man. Ain't nothing going down. And he's counting the money. The cop actually said he didn't see any red or blue fibers in it. That's what he said. It felt good. It looked good. But he said it was something, something was off, and he didn't see no red or blue fibers, and that's what made him suspicious of the cash. Yeah, That's what happened.
If it weren't for him having been a banker like that,
he'd have never noticed.
Anomalistic happenstance.
Yeah, he'd have
then
never
nobody
noticed.
would have.
Yeah,
that would have been entirely different.
Yeah.
They probably would have still confiscated the money.
They would have took the money. They
was-
would have found out eventually, right? But I would have been out of there at least, So
Right.
But they found a little weed on the. They found a little weed on the table, and that was their probable cause, they said. So in their police report, the way they wrote it up was that there was a disturbance. They came in, the door was opened, they seen weed on the table. Right? They put that on the police report. But when my attorney, when he was reading me this, I said, man, that's impossible. Because the table's around the corner, unless they got x-ray vision, they can't see through nothing.
Right.
Right? So my attorney had a private investigator go over there, take pictures of the room, had the management sign a sworn affidavit that none of the furniture was moved, and then the security guard admitted that they didn't see anything. So the police report and the security guard, they clashed, and the judge threw it out. I walked out the door.
So the result of that was the case being dropped on the basis of an illegal search and seizure.
Illegal search and seizure, yeah. Couldn't
But
believe
it.
Yeah.
They knew who you were.
They knew who I was
point.
now, though, man. They had me on their radar now. you know?
Right.
And that's when I started looking for my pops. You know, I actually back then you could Google, you know, it wasn't Google. I forgot what it was. It was like Yellow Pages. And I just started punching Arthur J. Williams Jr. and one popped in Alaska.
You mean senior?
Senior, yeah, Arthur J. Williams Sr. And one popped in Alaska. And I don't know, because there was only like 4 that I had found. And I just, for some reason, I felt like that one in Alaska was him. And so I wrote a letter because it was a P.O. box. Wrote a letter, gave him my number. And about 2 weeks later, he called me. And
how long had it been?
Like 22 years. 22 years, yeah. Yeah.
God damn.
And so we talked for a while, man. I told him I was in a jam. He said, come up there. And so, you know, I proceeded to go to Alaska. That was my next stop. I went up to Alaska. And again, just kind of how I went from Chicago to Texas, and my bad ways followed with me to Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing happened again. From when I went up to Alaska, me and my pops were jiving and talking and having a good time. And he showed me something he was doing. He was growing, you know, Alaska Northern Lights, right? He had a crazy grow room down up there, you know? And so it made me feel comfortable to explain to him what I was doing. And so now we're trading secrets, and before you know it, you know, he wants me to get into the money up there. I always called it the gold fever, right? Anyone who knew I was printing, which wasn't many, but the ones that would be around me, you know, they would get this gold fever. You know?
As soon as they found out you could do it.
Oh man, you know, it was like I won the lottery, right? You know, someone wins the lottery, you got cousins from 10 generations back, you know what I'm saying, showing up. Right? So that's how I felt. So that's why I always stayed real secret with it. But, you know, same thing happened with my pops, man. He got wide-eyed, you know, and right away wanted me to get into it. But to get the same type of materials and equipment in Alaska that I had in Chicago was impossible, right? I mean, you had to ship this and do this, and man, it was just, and I tried it. I tried to pull it off. The money came out all right, but what happened is his wife started spending it in Alaska, which was just a big no-no, you know? You're way at the top of the world, you know, with this money. It doesn't have very far to go.
Right.
You know? And where did it end up? In the Secret Services lab. And they came calling and brought the whole thing down, you know? And my dad ended up getting busted with pistols, and they grabbed me for the money. Even though I sort of escaped. Again, with my sixth sense, when I was up there, I knew something was wrong. And so I jumped out of Alaska. They caught me in Dallas. And that was pretty much it, man. I ended up going down for 3 years on that. And
so you and your pops together?
Yeah. He ended up getting 6 years for the guns. I got 3 years for the money. And
Were there five co-conspirators in that particular situation?
Yeah. His wife ended up getting 6. The other 2 ended up, I think one he got killed. Yeah, a lot of crazy stuff happened.
I want to pick up where your dad and you catch this case in Alaska, and he gets 6 for the guns, you get 3 for the paper, but you guys are in prison together.
No, they actually separated us. They wouldn't. They wouldn't let us be in the same prison because his wife was still going to court, and
she was still going to court on the case that you guys caught together.
Yeah.
But you had already been sentenced.
Yeah.
Why is it that her case was moving at a different pace? It's the same.
Well, because she was the one who told on everyone.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We forgot that part.
Yeah. So she was the last one. And what's wild is they offered her 6 months probation. And on the time of sentencing, she claimed that she didn't have nothing to do with it and she wasn't going to take no time. So, you know how the feds take that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, they gave her 6 years too. Yeah, she went from 6 months to 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah, she got more time than me.
Where was her lawyer?
Wow. Well, you know, it's weird. Karma got a way of like coming back. You know, my dad ran off with her on my, you know, from my mom, you know, and all these years later now, you know, this is how it ended for her, you know.
And she was kind of the catalyst for the case.
She was the catalyst completely, you know. She was the main person. But they didn't take lightly to the fact that here was a young man coming to find his father. And rather than my father telling me, no, we're not doing this no more, that he instigated it. So rather than coming back into my life and being a good influence, he perpetuated what I had been doing, and she allowed it and took part in it, right? And then try to put it all on me when the heat came down. And, you know, I took my hit, you know. Unfortunately, on the day I got out, literally on the day I got out, my father died in Sheridan, Oregon. He died in prison.
So the day you were released from that case,
Yeah.
your father in another prison passed.
Yeah.
Had a heart attack,
I had
right?
a heart attack. Yeah.
How did that? You guys have been away from one another a long time under some very screwed up circumstances. I mean, he was your father still to the degree that you knew him. How did that really impact you, his dying?
Man, I had just got a letter from him like 2 weeks before that, talking about getting out, getting right, doing the right thing, being a father and son. Something that I hoped for, you know. But you know, that day was a real strange one, you know, and I've had many, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you know, that one, you know, here you are, your freedom is being given back to you, which is the greatest feeling on the planet, to have freedom. And you know, so you know, you're packing your stuff and you got butterflies and you're nervous but you have such a joy within you that you're about to be free, you know. And it's such a you know, heightened state to be in. And then all of a sudden, you know, my sister calls me crying, you know, on the phone. And so I'm in the car and tells me that, you know, my dad died that morning. So you go from this super intense feeling of regaining your freedom to this level of mourning in a matter of seconds, you know. I mean, it was tough. It could have easily knocked me off my block, and it wasn't probably the best way to start my freedom, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well,
But I ended up going to work for this cat, Dennis Egan, who was kind of like an uncle. And so having a job was helping me get through the grieving because I'm working every day. And then my ex, who became a Chicago police officer, she had my 13-year-old at that time. And the kid was trying to print money, you know, at her house, trying to be like me.
but wait, when your dad passed and you got out, you were like 32, right?
Yeah, a little younger than that. Yeah.
Well, it was like 04, something like that.
No, maybe 03, 04, early 04.
All right. So in 06, 2 years later, you were arrested again at your apartment when the people searched your your spot, and they found counterfeit bills and tools to make counterfeit bills. That was like 2 years later.
Yeah, I didn't last long. I didn't last long, man.
So what happened with the job that the uncle guy?
You know, it was rolling cigars. It was paying like $12 an hour. You know, I mean, there were a few things that had happened from my dad dying. Then my ex pretty much threw my 13-year-old on me. So now I'm here with this 13-year-old boy. And
how long had you been away from him?
I mean, probably 5, 6
out of the 13 years of his life.
Well, I was with him probably the first like 3 years, 4, you know, around the first 3 years of his life. So it'd been a minute, you know, and I'm trying to connect with this kid, but he had a lot of anger towards me, you know.
So you had a pretty similar dynamic with you and your son. So with Arthur Sr. and Arthur Jr., you had this dynamic, this abandonment, this lack of connection, so forth, whatever. And kind of a tragic end. And then now you're repeating this with Arthur Jr. and Arthur III.
Yeah.
How were you dealing with that emotionally and psychologically?
Not well. You know, I didn't know how to be a dad.
Right. Where would you have learned it from?
Yeah, all I knew how to do was survive still. Right? Prison didn't really show me much, except I read a lot, right? My first sentence, I was reading religion. My second sentence, I pretty much studied, you know, the art
Renaissance, right?
Yeah, you know, now I'm going into different things. But actual development, prison I didn't gain development to go to that next step to stay free, right?
Right.
And so
you hadn't figured out the things that were leading to the choices and behaviors that led you to prison.
Exactly. Yeah. Just I wasn't there yet, you know?
Right.
And so now here I am, I have this my 13-year-old, and I'm trying to get my life together with him. And I don't know, I'd say maybe a year out, I had still been working. I probably worked up to like 9 months, 10 months at that time. And I found out he was doing music. He had a little music studio that his stepdad, my ex's boyfriend, bought him. Mm-hmm. And he started,
so he's like an aspiring rapper.
Yeah, a little rapper. Yep, aspiring rapper. And he was good. He was real good. And he rapped about a lot of the things that he went through as a kid, you know?
Naturally. Mm-hmm.
And so when I seen this, I love music too. Even, you know, when I listen to rap, Eric B, Rakim, KRS-One, I grew up on rap too, you know, growing up in the projects, you know, that's what we listened to that and house music and stuff. So I love music also. So I felt like this is where we could connect. And then I had a friend that had a studio, Johnny K. It was called Groove Sounds. He had produced Disturbed and a few other rock bands. And so he was allowing us to come into the studio, you know, and record. But he didn't do it, even though he was my friend, it wasn't free, you know? Mm-hmm. And back then it was expensive, right? To go into a studio. It wasn't cheap, you know?
Yes.
And, you know, not everyone had these home studios like they have now. And so that's pretty much what pushed me back into it is I'm paying for this music and I'm like, okay, this is, he has a chance, but it's going to cost a lot of money to get him there, right? And my job was nothing, right? It wasn't paying me nothing. I could barely take care of us. And that's when my criminal, you know, that criminal element came back in and said, okay.
Survival instincts.
Survival, yeah. You know, and they say counterfeiting is one of the most addictive things. And I would agree, right? You know, I haven't done a lot of drugs. I smoke a little bud, you know, but I haven't really gotten into the hard drugs, but I do know that it pulls on you, right? When you know how to print money and you don't have any.
And it's the ultimate goal in virtually every aspect of everyone else's life. And you have that in your head.
Yeah, you know.
It's I can get right to it. I ain't got to do nothing.
Yeah, you know. And So I got back into it, and unbeknownst to me, while my son is doing music, he's printing $20 bills. He's being just like me.
So hold on now. You got your basic skill set from Da Vinci, right? And so where did your son get it from? And he knew you did it, but where did he get the like the skill set? We know we got the inclination from. Where did he get the skill set?
So Rolling Stone came out with a magazine article in 2005 about me.
Was that the one that Jason Kirsten's book was based on? The one about you, the art of making money?
Yeah. So an article came out on me, and I didn't give all my secrets away, but I did give certain steps away, almost as a way of hoping that this would, because they were talking about making a movie and doing the book and all this,
right?
Which I thought, if I told myself, and this is that criminal in you, right? Man, if I could just make it to there, I'm gonna be all right, right? I just got to get to that finish line with this article and this book and this movie, and then I'm gonna be golden. Which didn't happen, of course, right? I ended up getting in trouble before the book came out. But when that article came out, now my son really wanted to be like me, right? Sees me in Rolling Stone, right? It's reading all about me, seeing all these things.
Yeah, Dad's a rock star criminal.
Yeah, right? And so that really, and I come to later find out that I actually inspired a few more other people, I guess, out there in the world to try to be like me.
Sure enough.
And so, me and him, I came home one day, and he was in his, now he had a little studio, and there he is, printing $20 bills. We get into an argument. He runs out the house. I run out after him. He throws the money at me. A cop passes by, sees this man and the kid fighting, money everywhere, stops. And man, that was it, that was the end of it, and
so that's what led to them coming into your apartment and finding the counterfeit bills and the tools and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't your shit.
Yeah, it wasn't even my stuff, man. I tell people my indictment is probably one of the smallest indictments in the federal history. It's only one paragraph, man. There's no other people on it. It's just possession of $1,200. That was it,
Right. So he didn't get arrested in that instance.
No, he didn't. No.
So now you're off the street.
I'm off the street.
He's got the bug.
Yeah.
And
there it went, I mean, I after about, so I think I was already locked up about 2.5 years when I get the call, because he was like just at the end of 15 when I got locked up. And I get the call a couple years later. I think I was in Big Spring or just leaving Manchester, saying that he was arrested. They waited till he had 18, and then the Secret Service came down on him. But apparently, from the time I left to 18, which was about 2.5 years, I guess he was pumping it out,
Right.
He was printing that money, it wasn't like mine, but he was doing his thing, selling it to gangs in the neighborhood and stuff like that. But as soon as he hit 18, they came and got him. They busted him with a bunch of stuff, paper. They said his place looked a mess, Whereas when I was printing money, I had 3-4 different places, man, that I had different things stashed at, right? I'd have the paper over here. I'd have the press over here. I didn't ever keep everything in the same place, ever.
Thus, that unique insight and wisdom of those intelligent knockaround guys.
Yeah.
That's where it comes in, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people get the game in their eye and they're sure to die. Some people get the game in their ear and they stay around here.
Yeah.
As the old saying used to go.
And that's what happened with me. So I had stuff to where I didn't have everything in one spot. Whereas my son, when they came in his apartment, it was everywhere, man. It was a mess. They had trash, this, that, So he came down.
Hold on. Let me interrupt you for a second. This is the headline read, "Son of Master Counterfeiter Arrested." The 18-year-old son of master counterfeiter Art Williams Jr., whose life is chronicled in the new book, The Art of Making Money, has been arrested on charges of passing fake $100 bills.
Yeah, that was it.
So now you and Art Williams III are serving time in the same correctional facility in Forest City, Arkansas.
Yeah.
So, how did you feel knowing that your son had followed your footsteps right into prison?
Man, it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. I was in Big Spring. I was actually dealing with a little bit of an illness there. And then, then I get this news that my son is coming to prison. And I was actually trying to get transferred to a medical facility. And they ended up transferring me to the very prison he was at, which was Forest City, Arkansas. I remember when I found out I was going there, because they tell you in the morning, the bus driver will tell you in the morning. Because at first I didn't think they were going to send me to where he was at. And when they told me I was going there, I remember the whole time I was on my transfer, I just couldn't wait to see him and give him a hug, Here it is, little 18-year-old kid in the feds. And I remember when I got to Forest City and went through all the, going through the holding cell and all the processing. When I got to my unit, right away, I asked a couple cats there. I was like, hey, I need to find my son and this and that. And they're like, man, everybody, knew you were coming, man. And your son's in the TV room right now. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, you're in the same unit as him. He's in the TV room. So boom, I shot to the TV room. And I'll tell you, it was one of the coolest, it was one of the coolest moments and one of the saddest at the same time, in the sense that when I walked into that TV room, that whole TV room went quiet. Usually they're crazy, man. People playing cards, this, that, and everybody was just looking at me. And he was sitting in the front, looked like a little baby, 18. And man, he just got up and ran to me and just hugged me. And we just held each other. Dudes in the TV room were tearing up, man, because they were thinking about their son, right? Because you didn't really see that too much. The feds didn't really put father and son together, I think the reason they did for me is because he was 18 and he had already got into a little something where he was selling cigarettes for somebody and ended up in the hole.
Of course.
Yeah, they were using them, right? 18. And so when I came in, I shut all that down right away, right? I went to anyone that he owed something to. I paid it. I said, don't ever talk to my son again. If you do, we got an issue. And that's just the way it is, And then something real special happened. They got music they got music programs in prison and different little things. They had an underground boxing that you had to pay for and piano. I started getting, my son at that time was just drifting. He had only been there about a month, but he was drifting already into the hole, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was super disciplined. I painted, I wrote, I read, I worked out. I got up at 5. I wrote for 2 hours. Then I'd go eat. Then I'd work out in the afternoon, and then I'd paint at night. And then I would read before I went to sleep. Well, guess what happened? My son wanted to start doing what I was doing.
Of course.
He wanted to be like dad. So now I get him into the music. So now he's going down to the music and he's getting back into his music there. I started paying for his boxing. So they'd go at the very edge and they would train in the back where the guards couldn't see. This cat named Jackson from Chicago, real tough old cat, man. And he was teaching these youngsters some skills. My son was the only white kid back there, right? Mm. But he learned, Now he's working out. He's doing his music. He's reading at night. And then I learned how to become a father in there. I realized that this boy just wants to be like his dad. That's all he ever wanted, man, was to be like his dad.
That's right.
And so now he sees what I'm doing. And so now he wants to emulate it. And so it even inspired me more. So now I'm painting and I'm writing and we're walking the track, we're talking, we're being a father and son. And I'll tell you, one of the proudest moments I ever had of him, American Greed had did a segment on us. And we're watching the American Greed in prison, right? And it's talking about me and him. I became real sad when I watched it because it went from my dad, you know, me, my dad, and then him dying to me and my son. It ended with me and my son in prison together.
Mm.
And I remember watching that and thinking to myself, there's going to be a better ending to this.
Mm.
There's going to be a better ending to this. There has to be. But they played some of my son's music on the American Greed.
Oh.
Right? So now the next day when we're in the yard, all the brothers come out, the young brothers, and they're like, hey man, you rap? We heard you on TV last night, man. Why don't you do the music? Because, you know, in the feds on like 4th of July and different holidays, they'll have big music concerts, right? In the rec yard. Mm-hmm. And you'll have your R&B and rap day, you'll have your country day, you'll have your rock day, right? During the holiday. So this young cat asked my son to rap with them, you know? My son came to me, he's like, man, Dad, you know, should I do that? You know, I don't know. Cause you know, it's still kind of, it's racially segregated in prison, right? Mm-hmm. You know, it's still very separated, right? People aren't really too intermingle in prison unless you're the same race. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, man, you think the white dudes will get mad at me if I do this? I said, listen, man, if you want to get on that stage and you want to sing, I'm behind you and I don't give a shit what anyone got to say.
That's right.
And I'll stand by you, man, as a proud father. So if this is something you want to do, don't worry about what everyone else is thinking, you know? And dude, man, let me tell you, man, he got up there. It was about maybe 2 months later when they had the show. And you had the whole yard out there. You had the whole yard out there at Ford City. And here's this little 19-year-old kid up there rocking the mic, man. And he rocked it. He rocked it. He didn't have no fear. And I remember being so proud of him at that moment, you know? And everyone cheered and people loved it. People weren't talking about him. They were talking good about him.
Right.
Like, man, that little youngster got up there and jammed. You see him go, you know? Because he did. He let it all out. All the anger, all the frustration, all the pain, all the tears.
That's awesome.
And I remember, man, we had the dream, right? I was going to do the art. He was going to do the music. This is what we kept talking about. You know, I'm going to do the art. You're going to do the music. Let's build this empire together. You know? And, you know, he ain't doing music now, but he is doing something special now.
But wait, before you go to him now, you guys got out same year, 2013.
Yeah. So the way that his time set up, I actually got out a month earlier than him. And I ended up going to work for this maintenance company, and I was cleaning toilets, driving a bike to work, cleaning toilet bowls. That's what I did. I went from a counterfeiter to a toilet bowl cleaner, you know? But I loved it.
Not just a counterfeiter.
Yeah, no.
I mean, historically, you are one of the all-time greatest counterfeiters that's ever lived. Well, that's ever been, you know, known.
Yeah, that's been known. Yeah. So here I go from that to cleaning toilets. But I love my job. I loved it. It was really the first job I had in life. And man, it was a good feeling getting on my body. I didn't have a car. I got out with nothing, you know? And
what was that like for a kid who'd experienced the degree of poverty you'd experienced and then hit the heights and had the access to the resources you had, and now here you are after all you'd been through, all you'd endured, all you learned. I mean, you'd established something that had never been done before, these hybrid bills where you did a thing where you used computer technology and you'd offset the computer technology with your artistic skill set. Like, and I want to definitely talk about the hybrid bills, but like, what was psychologically, what was that like? I'm cleaning toilets. I can make money, like literally.
Well, at first it didn't. At first, I was all right with it, right? I just did 6.5, almost 7 years. I was just with my son. So I just looked at the job as a means to get to my dream, right? Like I remember Jerry even said, you got to have staying power in the game to make it, right? Anytime you do anything out of desperation, you'll fail. That was something I learned from the knockaround guys, right? You got to have staying power, right? So for me, my job was going to be my staying power as I pursued my dream. And so in the beginning, it was all right. As time went on, I realized that to try to pursue the dream, it was going to be really difficult to do having an 8 to 10 hour, 8-10 hours devoted to a job every day, and then try to do my dream at night, which is what I was doing. But I did it for a while. My son ended up getting out. I got him a job as a porter at a car lot. And then I told him to go get his CDL. I said, look it, man, you could get the one good thing about truck driving, it pays decent and you could be a felon. You could get a CDL, you could drive, you can make decent money. And so he listened to me. He went and got his CDL. I was still working. I actually transferred jobs and started transporting vehicles. And, was doing my art, and I had a couple art shows. Good crowd came out, but didn't really sell nothing. It was one of them, drink the wine or drink the wine, eat the cheese and hit the door type thing, And so the art, that's how it is. So I started feeling a little funny about the art, where I started feeling insecure about, like, man, maybe this isn't what I'm going to be able to do in life. Because then I started learning how hard it is to be a high level artist, right? Like world renowned art. And there's not many really, right? There's musicians and there's actors.
I don't imagine you knew many of the few that existed. You didn't know any.
Yeah, I just knew the ones I read about, or, I started looking at, because when I went to prison, there was no social media. Now I'm out and there's iPhones and social media. So I slowly figured out how to learn that stuff. And I felt like I was a small fish in a big sea. Yeah, I was a counterfeiter, but that's how, and I had a good story, but that's how people kept looking at me, as a counterfeiter, not an artist. Oh, he's a counterfeiter just doing art, right? Not that he's an artist that did counterfeiting, right? So being put into that category, the art world wouldn't ever take me serious. They got their cats that are going to art school, getting art publishers, art managers, getting repped by the galleries. That's how you get into the big boy status. Not some cat getting out of prison who printed a little bit of money who wants to paint now, right? And so I ran up against that brick wall. And that's where I almost went back to printing, after about, I don't know, maybe after about 1.5 years of being free, working, doing my art, I started to give up. Because my job only paid me $15 an hour. So I had a roommate, me and him we were always beefing, right? So I could barely pay my child support. I mean, it was just tough. I found a whole new respect for people who worked, like, man, because I was, my first year as a janitor, when I was cleaning toilet bowls, I actually had to shovel snow too when it snowed. So, man, I think that first year it snowed like 72 inches, man. It had like one of the worst snow years ever. And I shoveled every inch of it, So I had a whole new respect for people that got up every morning and went and jammed for their money. And I'm glad I went through that. It humbled me. And it showed me how, because I had a problem when I just spend, like I had a printer behind me, So it taught me how to, go to Aldi's and spend $80 at Aldi's, man. I had to learn all kinds of things, It was all new to me. Here I am 40, but my
old
son.
habits die hard.
Yeah, they sure do. But here it is. My son, he's doing his thing. He's going getting his CDL. He got him a little trucking job at first. And here I am. He don't know it. He thinks I'm still working, but I've drifted back into the streets, I had gave up for a second there. I went and borrowed some money off some cats and started hunting for the equipment to start doing what I did again, And what was the irony in it this time is now here it is years later, everything had went digital, right? Everything went digital. So I was trying to get the equipment that I used to use, the offset press, and you couldn't find them no more. Everything was scrapped, right? So here I am buying an offset press from Cincinnati and then buying another one in Minnesota and then taking the parts off this one to put on this one. Man, I went on a wild goose chase for like 6 months trying to bring together all the equipment and literally rebuilt everything. I rebuilt a lot of stuff, And just when I was getting ready to go, I had felt a little bit of heat on me. I didn't know what it was from. And so I backed off things,
How did you discern that? Like when you said you felt the heat, what were the things that stood out?
I was already on high alert because I was trying to get this equipment, right? So I was going through extreme ways to buy an offset press in Cincinnati, driving down there, getting someone to get it for me. It was nuts what I was doing.
Because you had to keep your name away from anything.
Yeah, I had to keep my away from
with
anything related to that shit, And so,
like you buying a magic marker,
it would be
deemed like he's at it again.
He's at it again. Yeah, no paper. I can't buy paper, man. I'll go to jail. But so here I went through extremes to get this together, this operation, which is not no little operation for one, and then. I was waiting on one thing, and it was this liquid. And during that time, I can't really explain how I knew the heat had hit me. But there's, you just feel like something's around you,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And whether it was from paranoia because I was getting close to firing it up, maybe that could have been it, right? Because I was right there. I had the paper. The machines were working. Everything was ready to go.
It's a heightened awareness. It's your subconscious. It's like your brain is telling your subconscious, anything that don't fit with what we know to be normal, point that out to me. That's like sixth sense. That's where it comes from.
Yeah. And so what do you know? What happened? Right when I get this stuff, I started to feel things were getting back to normal. Come to find out, there was an operation in Chinatown, a counterfeit operation in Chinatown, which is right next to my neighborhood. And the people got busted in Detroit taking money there. So I just said, that's why they were on me, because of them. They didn't know what I was doing, but I felt like whatever they were doing and the money was moving, of course, they're going to look up counterfeiters in the area. I pop up. And so they jammed on me, but didn't see me doing anything. And so they just ended up hitting the Chinese operation. So here I am. I'm about to go ahead and get going now. I feel good. Heat's gone. I got this little chemical which made the strip glow. It glowed red for hundreds. And I went home. I set it on the counter. I was just in and out. I had to go to the house and I was leaving. Well, what do you know? My son didn't go to work that day, and he just popped over just to see what I was up to. Door was open. He walks in. He goes to the counter. He picks that stuff up, and he knew right away what it was. And I tried to bullshit him when I came out. I was shocked. Hey, man, what you doing? I thought you. He's like, what is this, man? What you doing with this? Why you have this? I said, I'm using it for my art. He said, no, you're not. You're lying. This is bullshit. You're not. You're not using this for your art. You're back at it again, aren't you? And I said, nah, man, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. So now we're arguing. He goes out the house, jumps in his car. I run out after him. I jump in my car because I'm worried he's going to tell his mom. Right? His mom's still a Chicago police officer, man, you know? I need to get to him, man, and let him know, like, man, you can't be. I just dumped a bunch of money into it that I borrowed, for one, right? And where do you think he takes me, man? This kid drives back to the very spot that me and him got jammed up 7, 8 years prior. Right on that corner. He jumps out of the car. I jump out. He's pointing to the curb. He's like, remember you sitting there crying? Remember that 8 years ago? I was a kid. You went to prison. I came after you. Remember that? And man, he was crying and yelling at me. And when he drove away, I just sat there just stunned, you know, like I knew I had to shut it down. I knew I had to shut it down. Shortly after that, not even a couple days after that, the woman who I was dating calls me and tells me she's pregnant. So my son does this. Then the girl that I'm dating calls me and tells me I'm pregnant. She's pregnant. And that was it. I walked away. I shut everything down. And it was a tough situation, you know, because I owed some cats some money for it. I ended up giving them some art, actually, to alleviate the situation.
In place?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and I didn't think they'd take it, but they did, man. I told them, I said, man, I'm going to become an artist, and this is going to be worth something. But this part I can't do. I got to walk. I can't do it. And I remember dude just smiling, man, just smiling. I said, you know what? I think you will make it, man. Let's see what happens. So he let me make it.
How'd that work out for him?
It was love, man. It was love at the moment, you know. And then I was sitting at Lacuna Lofts over here in Pilsen in Chicago, and I just felt like a loser. I mean, I had no job. I got a pregnant woman. My son's pissed at me. My art hadn't done nothing yet. I couldn't even print money right. Got that shit screwed up. I just felt like nothing could work, you know. And Joe Cacciatore, he owned the building, and he was walking through the lobby, and he liked me. Me and his son were really good friends, and he was the one who was Joe Cacciatore Jr. was running the building. But Joe Cacciatore Sr. was walking through, and he seen me. He's like, hey, what's wrong? You know? I was sitting just kind of, he could just tell I wasn't in a good place. And I told him, I said, man, I don't know what I can do in life. You know, I've been out 2 years now, and I'm failing at everything. And he said, well, why don't you come work for me? He said, we're doing something at the building, and we need an artist intern. He goes, and could I pay you $5,500 a month to work for me? And that sounded like a lot of money to me, man, because I was doing $15 an hour, man. I wasn't getting nothing, right. You know? I said, man, absolutely I could work for that. He said, okay, you're going to come work for me. And that was the moment that my life changed. I learned at that moment that when all things seem, when you feel like everything has failed, that even yourself are a failure, but you have that one little glimpse of hope, right? And for me, it was my art, and then to walk away from something. Like, I could have pressed that green button, man, and that green money would have been coming out, right? But I made the right decision, and I walked away from it. And by making that right decision, even though shit looked real gnarly, you know, no job, pregnant girl, son pissed, this and that. But because I made that right decision, Joe Cacciatore walked by and said, here, I'm going to give you a job. I waited patiently for it, not even knowing I was waiting for it. Right? And that was the moment that it hit. And I said, wow. if I just wait out the tough times, and which I could because I've been through some tough shit, and stop being, panicky when something bad is happening, and react right away, but sit there and just wait patiently and stay mentally prepared for the good's gonna come.
Opportunity favors the prepared.
Yeah. And so for me, I started working for Joe. Artists are coming in. I'm helping them. I'm starting to paint again. My wife has the baby. We name him Da Vinci, right? Life is looking good. My job ended with Joe after about 10 months, but I was good. I knew that I was all right, right? And so then I ended up painting houses for someone for a little while. And then that ended up coming to a close. And so about a year and a half after that happened with my son, I was working, I'd paint at night, but I didn't really have it that I had to be an artist in life. I had it that I was all right. I had a little house, had my little family. I had this job. I'd start at 7, get off at 3, painting houses. It was hard, but it paid the bills. I still had a little time to paint at night, which is what I love to do. So I had found a rhythm that I liked.
And peace.
And peace, yeah. My son was proud of me again. I had my little baby.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens? My house burns down. It came in threes. It was such a hit, right?
What caused that?
It was electrical fire. Yeah. I was working. So my boss, it came in threes. My boss, it was during the slow season. So he let me go because I was the low man on the totem pole.
This is the painting gig.
Painting gig, yeah.
A house painting gig.
Yeah, the house painting. Then I let someone use my car and they hit a pothole and they cracked something from underneath the car. So now I didn't have a car.
Mm.
And then I'm gone and I get a call from the fire marshal. My house was on fire. It all happened within like a month, man. Boom, 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 right? And I went into, when we were allowed to go into the house, I had been working on a painting about mental illness with my brother, right? Because I lost my brother to that mental illness. And when I walked, and he used to always tell me, art, it's going to be your art that frees you, man, that makes you feel secure. He believed in it. He believed in it more than me.
This was your younger brother,
My
correct?
younger brother, yeah. And what do you know, when I'm allowed to go back into the house, either the fire or the water destroyed everything, right? Holes here, it was just a mess. But there was that painting sitting in the corner, right? I even posted it on my Facebook years ago. You see the painting sitting there with with flames, looked like they were coming up behind it. And I just felt like at that moment, man, whatever happened with the house, whatever happened with all the shit I just went through, that this is what I was supposed to be doing. I wasn't supposed to be painting houses. I wasn't supposed to be in this level of this is what my life was going to be. There was something more for me. And I had to believe in it again. And
the painting was undamaged?
It was undamaged. Yeah, you check it out on my Facebook. You go back, it was in that would have been in like 17, 18, something like that. I put the photo up there, and it was undamaged. Nothing wrong with it, man. You could see where it was burnt up behind it too. It was pretty intense.
Was the house a loss?
Yeah, we lost the house. Yeah,
The house was a loss, but the painting was
saved. Yeah,
I
still have it.
Mind-boggling.
I still have that painting too. Yeah, I still have it.
That's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
I want to touch on this hybrid bill, this thing where you, before we get out of it completely, the aspect of your counterfeiting, this hybrid bill. How did you come up with this, and what was that process?
Well, so the money had always evolved, right? From the first time that I had my experience with Da Vinci when I was young, and he showed me the older techniques with the offset press, plate burners, photography, that type of stuff. And then from the new technology, who my wife, she was a techie my ex-wife, Natalie, she was a techie. So she was real, she was a savant in that area. She knew about the new printers and knew this. And so I basically, one of the hardest things to do on money were the serial numbers, right? To change them. When you use an offset press, you'd have to change the plate every time you'd want to change the numbers. So my first thought was, man, with the digital, I could use a program where I could change every single serial number. Wow, did that make a huge difference, right? So that's kind of how it started. Like what I basically, even like with my art now, it's the same thing. I get an idea and I'm like a scientist. I'll keep trying something and it'll fail, to fail. It might fail 1,000 times. And then boom, it works.
That's a scientific process. That is it.
I try this, don't work. Okay. And I'll have stuff written down everywhere, right? I'll try this, even with my colors, because I make a lot of my own colors. So I have to be very careful and write them down, because if I don't, I'll come back to something like, man, how did I make that? So I like to write a lot. I still handwrite everything.
Right.
I still handwrite stuff.
Excellent. Excellent. That's a psychoneuromuscular activity. It imprints information on the brain.
I love to write.
It's too bad people type their lives away.
Yeah, I love to handwrite still, And so for me, that's how it starts, So I over time was able to see that the offset printing provided certain things, right? So like the color of money, you'd be shocked at how difficult it is to get the color of the money exact, right? You run a piece of paper through a regular laser or inkjet printer, it's not going to come out the color of money no matter what you do. No matter what you do. There's always going to be an offness to it. But on an offset press, I can mix my own colors, right? So I can adjust, not using a computer, just using my eye. So I've always had a really good eye for color. I color match almost exactly. Even when I'm painting, I could get real almost exact to the color that I need. So that was the first thing I seen, that the offset press, I can get that color of money, that cream green look, greenback, right? And which is important because it covers the whole piece of paper. So I would run the paper through just that and just tint it. That's what I would call my tint process. Get my registration right, and then I would run the head and the border through. So I would put it through, how many passes? It was like 5 passes, because each one was different. So when I first started printing, and now the internet's getting more and more. I went to the federal government site, the Secret Service site, and watched how they made money. And what I realized is, where all counterfeiters failed, they tried to run the image at one time. But as I watched how the U.S. Treasury printed, which they had it on the computer, you could go to the U.S. Treasury and look it up. I could see how they ran it separate, right? They would run this through, then they do the serial separate, they do the seal separate, and so I was like, okay, I don't have a 4-color, Heidelberg or anything, but I got a 1-color with good registration. So as long as I put my registration and it's perfect, I could just keep running it back through. Now, some would get messed up, right? But a lot of them would look really good. And so basically, my process was, I mimicked the feds just at a very small scale, And where the hybrid came in is, like I said, I was able to take the new technology to do like my seals, my serial numbers, the little shifting 100 in the bottom right-hand corner. I could do that with the laser or the inkjet, and it would go quick. But then there were certain things that just you couldn't get unless you created the color yourself. And that's what I would use the offset for. And so when they would come together, that's where the hybrid came, But like I said, it was a lot of trial and error. It took years to do. I mean, it was, a lot of time and effort that went into it. And the truth be is that my money, I didn't ever really get to experience my money at its best, unfortunately.
What do you mean?
So my money, every time I would make some, I would always learn something new to make it better, right? So, I think my first batch came out purple. It wasn't green at all. That crap was purple, right? But as things progressed, the money became better and better and better. To where that last batch of money that I made, to me, was perfect. Everything. It had the fibers. It had every single thing that it needed to be on par with a real note. And I didn't ever get to use it.
Why?
I went to prison, man. That was it. And so for me, years later, after I went to prison with my son and got out and almost went back to it, all those things that I had learned to make it the best that I hadn't used yet, I created a batch, but I didn't get to really do nothing with it because I went away. Now, the years later, when I'm going to try to redo this thing, I'm like, okay, now I'm going to really bust their ass with this thing, right? I know what to do now. Now I'm going to be able to make, and I'm an artist now, so I've been painting, so my eyes are different. Everything's changed. But my son saved my life, right? My son's coming in and walking in that day shut the whole program down. And then my wife being pregnant, those two things saved my life. And then Joe Cacciatore. So as far as the hybrid was concerned, that's basically what it is just a process of trial and error. Just like life, just like my art. My art's the same way. Man, I do some real complicated shit,
Yes, you do.
I mean, I even think that sometimes my art's a little bit ahead of its time because people look at it, they don't get it yet.
I agree.
They will 10 years from now, 20 years from now, maybe when I'm dead. And then they'll be like, holy shit, this dude was doing some wild stuff. Right? Right now, they don't get it. It's just a cool image, but they will one day, but it's the same thing. When I want to put a hidden hologram in the canvas, right? How do I do that? I can't go buy the canvas with a hologram in it. I got to put it in there, right? So now I got to experiment and figure it out. I'm actually about to do holograms today, right? But it's just that curiosity. I tell people that our minds are equipped with some pretty amazing tools to do great things, right? And if you don't allow failure to discourage you, then you can do those great things. Because your mind is made to respond to overcome, right? If I try this and it don't work, let me try it again. If it don't work, I teach my son, Vinci, that now he's trying things that aren't working. And I'll guide him. I won't show him how to do it. I'll guide him to keep trying until he figures it out.
Right. Develop a process of his own.
Develop a process of elimination until you find the right thing. And I use it in all things of life now, not just my art, but even in my own relationship with my wife. When I see things are going the wrong way, I'll step back and try to figure it. I'll say, okay, what am I doing? I'm not thinking what she's doing. I'm going to think, what am I doing, right? Now, some things are irreversible, but, there's things that if you make the right decisions and the right movements, things can grow. And so for me, it's the way I live now. Everything is about, even with bad relationships, with friendships, I've had to get rid of friendships because they were causing certain failures, right? And so I finally had to say, okay, there's a reason why this keeps happening, and I need to let go of this relationship because it's not going to change, right? So for me, I just think the process of elimination and failure until you create success is so important for people, and that's basically how I've done it. That's how I'm here right now. Yep.
Yeah. So, I got two questions about the counterfeiting part. What were or are, to the degree that you are even hip to this, the common things that got counterfeiters caught up? What were the common mistakes that they were making?
I mean, most counterfeiters, they've either been arrested because of other people telling on them, right? Who were caught with the money, or spending it in really ridiculous manners, right? A guy pays his rent with the counterfeit money, right? Or he goes and pays his car payment with the counterfeit money. Like, I've heard some really ridiculousness, right? Using the money in your area will get you jammed up quick. Man, sometimes I drive 10 hours to spend and then come back,
That's right.
So,
Don't shit where you sleep.
Yeah, but the majority of it is and with most criminal cases is someone hipped them to it, right? Somebody told them, hey, this cat's doing this or whatnot, to get out of their thing. And then a lot of times, like I said, counterfeiting is so addictive that the feds, all they got to do is sit back and wait. They know within, 90 days to a year, the likelihood of you doing it again is really high. So if bills are popping up, we're going to come get you. Or the counterfeit money's not that good. That's another way that cats get caught. They're making money that's just not up to the standard. And that's why I used to burn a lot of money. If I didn't feel like the money was good, I'd throw it in the fire.
That's right.
Start over again.
Right.
I haven't burnt any art yet, but I might soon. I ain't burning I'm not burning no paintings, man. But yeah,
you better not yours.
Yeah. But,
you mentioned that your lady was tech savvy. You're not talking about the one who ended up becoming a cop, are you?
No. It was my girl Natalie. She became my wife. I had 3 kids with her. She's from Texas. I met her when I was in Texas, and she was working as a computers were still, the internet was still just being used for college purposes at the time, and so she was where she worked at tech support for this big company. She did pretty well, and she was always up to date with new technology and new equipment. And which was perfect for me because, and then she loved the that I was from Chicago, and so she wanted to be kind of the bad girl, and I helped her do that. Let's make some money, girl. And we went on a run. We went on a run for a while, but yeah.
The amount, what do you believe was the total of all the paper that you printed over your career, which your career was technically on and off for about 15 years, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's about 15. I that question's hard to answer because I don't know, right? So any number I give would not be correct, because I really don't know. Would you say
it was?
I mean, I could say 100 million, 10 million, 5 million, I mean, there's the thing about how much I printed is that I did what I needed, right? I wasn't that guy up in Canada printing 250 million in 20s which I don't even know how it's possible, right? You know what I'm saying? You know how much 250 million in 20s would be, man? You ever see $1 million in 20s? That's a lot of paper, dog. So, you know, I don't need to say how much I printed, because it's not how much, but it was how good.
Yes.
Right? I can tell you it was the best, right? That's what I can tell you. My money was the best on the street. How much? I don't know. It's kind of like my art. I'm stingy with it, right? I make it real difficult to get my paintings, you know? And it was the same way with the money. And that's why I commanded such a high price for it. Most counterfeiters get 10 cents on the dollar. I was getting 30 for a reason, you know? When they looked at it, when you looked at it and you felt it and you held it up and you marked it, you're like, damn, how is this not real, you know? That was what was always important to me.
Right.
It wasn't how much I did, you know? It was how good it was, you know? And
right.
Yeah, so yeah, but you know, I can tell you this much. It was a lot. You know what I'm saying? It was a lot for a lot of years, you know? But again, man, I wasn't really that greedy though, you know? I didn't ever have those. For one, it was hard to make. My money wasn't easy to make, man. It went through a lot. It went through like 12 different steps, you know, from cutting out the paper, putting the paper on carrier papers, taking the pictures, burning the plates, mixing the ink, putting it together, making the strips, making the watermarks, right? Like it wasn't I just threw it in the printer and boom, it came out. No. And it was handcrafted. My hands made each and everything, you know? I'd have to put super glue on my fingertips so I wouldn't get fingers, you know, because you couldn't wear gloves because it'd get all messed up. So I had to figure out a thing. And that shit from Gone in 60 Seconds where he pulled out the thing, that shit didn't work either, man, you know? So I would put super glue. So my fingertips were always hard, man. If you shook my hand, you'd be like, damn, dog, what's wrong with you, man? You're scratching me up, you know? Because my fingertips were always covered with super glue, you know? So it was a hard process. And so it wasn't, you know, like I could make 100 million. I couldn't print 100 million. It wasn't realistic. And for one, where would I store it all, you know? So I was the type of cat, man, that I'd print 500,000, usually was a good run for me. After it was all said and done, I'd probably end up with like maybe, you know, 450, 400, because some would get messed up and some wouldn't look right, you know. And then I would move that. I would move cautiously, you know. I didn't have to like go extra, man. Here I am with this cat, you know. I was crazy some of the ways that I'd sell you the money. You'd get a phone in the mail, just a flip phone in the mail. You'd open it up and it would be me calling you. You know, that's how I mean, I did some wild shit, man. I was like, you know, real cautious with the way I moved with it, you know. And
right. Were you on a counterfeit beef during the stint that you did where you and my son were in the feds again?
Yeah. That was that was the one. That was the one. That was the big one. That was the one that retired me. You know, here's the thing: is for me, I did a couple prison bits, right? My first one in Texas when I was about 21, I think. And then later on with my dad, and then the big one that really changed my thinking, right? I tell people I wish that I would have got the big one in the beginning, right? Because when you do 24 months, when you're 20 years old and you're working out and reading and laughing with the fellas, man, I've damn near had more fun in prison than out here sometimes. Man, me and my guys, man, we would laugh our asses off in there, man. Because we didn't have no worries. We didn't have no bills, man. You did our laundry for us. You fed us. We're 20. We're talking shit, right? So, you know, it goes by like that, right? And then you get another sentence, and that's a little one, right? And you're like, okay, I'm going to change. But when you get 105 months, and you got to do year after year after year after year, that gets to you.
Birthday after birthday,
When you
Christmas
see
after
your-
Christmas,
Yeah.
Thanksgiving after Thanksgiving.
When you see your daughter's 5 years old, and now she's 10, 11, 12, you missed it all. That shit hurts, man.
Yeah, priorities. I mean, as you grow
Yeah.
older and your priorities start to change, you get things out of your system that you thought were important, and you find out very quickly they aren't important. And as you start to delete the lists of your priorities, that void that is created by those deletions, it begins to populate through, sheer force.
Yeah.
What is truly important?
What is truly important, man. And then being in prison with my son, right? Like all these factors, brought me to that place on that corner where he was pointing at the curb of, do you want to make this decision? What is your decision going to be now? Where's the fork in the road? Are you going to finally stand up to your insecurities and your fears and go for it, man? And look what happened. Look what happened, After my house burned down, right? Here it is. I lose my job, I lose my car, and I lose my house. That could have been a moment to say, man, screw this, man. I'm going to fire the press up. But instead, what did it do? Is I got hungry. I seen that painting in the house, the only thing that burned up. I got my wife there with my baby. She's saying, hey, let's ride this out. We ended up getting a little shithole 1-bedroom in the basement, man, in the neighborhood, And here we are. And one of my friends, he tells me, he says, hey, Art, you need to go to Art Basel.
Mm-hmm.
You need to go to Art Basel. He said, you trying to be an artist in Chicago is not going to work. You got to go where people are going to see you.
Where people are looking for
Where
you.
people are looking for it,
Don't even know you exist.
Yeah,
but
they didn't even know I exist, And what happened, one of my good friends, man, he had an adjuster company, and I started doing some side work for him. And he asked me one day, he said, he goes, what would it be, what would you need to do to be an artist? And I said, man, I need to do it full time. I said, I've tried to do the job and then paint at night and then I said, you got to give it 100. You got to give it 100, because it's a tough game. And he told me, he said, well, how long you think it would take? I said, man, I don't know. It could take a lifetime. People who've done art 20, 30, 40 years usually don't get recognized till they're dead, I said, but I know that I could do something with it. And that's when he told me, he said, well, here, add up your bills. He goes, I'm going to pay him for 6 months. That way you could just paint. That's what he told me, man. Couldn't believe it, man. It was such a blessing, man. And
What year was that?
that was 2017. So I had been out of prison already about 3-4 years. Yeah, so I had already passed that 3-year threshold of the recidivism. They say within, 3 years, 74% return,
That's
So
right.
I had already
That's
went
right.
through my mishaps and then, started to do the artist apprentice and then paint the house, So I went through some tough times, but I kept making the right decision. Just I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to do the right thing. And now here I get this opportunity. And that's where it began, I started jamming. I'll never forget. He had a little extra office space out in Elk Grove. I would drive out there every day. I'd get there early. I was so excited. I'd paint. I created 4 pieces. Another friend of mine had a place down in Miami that I could show those 4 pieces during Art Basel. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any idea what Art Basel was. I just knew I was going. That's it, And I loaded up my truck with those paintings. I drove down there. The first 2 days were real tough. And then the third day, I caught a break, man. I met a cat from Chicago Heights. He brought me in. He liked my story, loved my art, threw me my own little show at an airport hangar. I ended up meeting the vice president of Arnold Schwarzenegger's charity. She loved my art. She loved my story. And she asked me if I'd come back. I sold all 4 pieces. And then she asked me to come back to one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's charity events. And I did. 2 months later, I smoked it there, sold all the pieces there, gave Arnold's charity a chunk of the money. And then they invited me to Arnold Schwarzenegger's house in California about 6 months later. And that was like a fairy tale night, you know? I worked my ass off. I drove out to LA, you know, with all my art. I drive everywhere, just like spending money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I get to Arnold's house, and Tom Arnold's actually the auctioneer, and he's auctioning off my piece. And I got, you know, it was just one of those crazy moments, you know? And ended up raising $75,000 for the kids from the auction. But then after the auction was done, I met this beautiful family, the Rizzuto family, and they ended up buying everything I had. I ended up selling like $480,000 worth of art in like 3 hours, man. I gave the charity, I think it was like 100 and something thousand of it. And then I came back to Chicago and I built my gallery on Morgan Street in the neighborhood, man. You know, everybody was telling me, Art, you got to go downtown. You got to go downtown. You got to go downtown. You know, that's where you need to be with your art. And I was like, nah, man, I'm staying in the neighborhood, man. And I posted up on Morgan. I've been there 8 years now, you know? So, yeah, man,
That's crazy.
It's been far out, dude. It's been far out, man.
So the 4 pieces that you sold initially, how much did you get for those?
It wasn't a lot, you know. It was like 16 grand for all 4 of them, but it was a lot to me, man. Right? You know, 16,000 was a lot of money for 4 paintings, when I had been selling paintings for like $1,000, right?
Right.
Up until that point, right?
Right.
I was lucky if I got 1,500 for the piece, you know.
Right.
You know, so for me, I was driving back on the phone with my wife, and I was like, babe, you're not gonna believe it, man. I sold all 4, you know? I mean, just to sell one piece of art is a really cool feeling.
Yes.
Right? Like, cause then people, it gives you that feeling that you're worth something. That what you have to say through your art is worth something, and people see value in it.
Right. The dream is attainable.
Exactly.
It's
right?
real at that point. I recognize that in some of the artists, the rappers that I'd met early on in their careers, and you know, they'd been driven up until the point they had been given an opportunity in the form of a contract or something with some label. They'd been driven by belief and desire and, you know, desperation in a lot of instances. Yeah. And then, you know, that check comes and they see that check and they see whatever numbers are on. It doesn't matter if it's big or small.
Yeah.
But at that point, this is not something I think is possible. This is something I know now is possible. I'm holding the physical proof of it, you know? And it takes, I believe that it took, just from observation and watching these artists, I believe that it took I watched it take all of their skill and ability to a whole other level, like almost immediately, because the belief had increased so much.
Yeah.
Was that like that for you?
Most definitely. I mean, I look at some of the art. So my Facebook started on the day that I was released, right? And just recently, because I created a bunch of new work in the last like 7-8 months since I've been back in Chicago from LA. And the work is beautiful, it's colorful, it's powerful, and the quality is like how my money was, you know, at its end. Just really high, right? It's fine art, right? But if you look at my stuff when I got out, that stuff was, wow, man. I'm like, damn, did I really sell that? You know what I'm saying? Did I really sell that piece, man? Now to them, it looks great, right? But to me, when I look at where I was, because I self-taught and I do oils, right? So oil is a difficult medium to use. You know,
Yes,
a lot of people
indeed.
don't like to play with it. I love it, right? I know how to move it and dance with it, right? Like oil is you know, I hope no protesters throw nothing on my art, but whatever, that's a whole nother thing, you know, because they getting into the whole not using oil these days, but I love
Why?
oil. Huh?
Why?
I don't know. I mean, I've seen them throw, the protesters, climate activists throwing things on paintings and stuff, you know. You haven't seen none of that? You should look it up sometime. Yeah, there was a couple paintings just recently that were damaged because they were throwing stuff on them, but
Oh,
No,
I heard about a lady doing that at some
Yeah.
big museum.
yeah, it
Recently.
yeah. It was
I thought she was just nuts.
Nah, they were just doing it because they don't like oil, you know. But I love oil. But nevertheless, if you look at the art from my early days to now, it's evolved, and a lot of it has to do with, for one, I put thousands of hours into this thing, right? But it's also the belief of what you were saying, that now I know this is who I am. This is real,
Yes.
right? This is real now. This isn't just a dream anymore. The dream has been achieved. Now it's about sustaining the dream and enhancing the dream,
That's
right? So that's where I'm at now. I'm in a really fun place right now in my life. I'm getting ready to start a new body of work. I'm gonna get a little gangster on it. I'm going, you know, a lot of my art, you know, it's a little bit poppy at times because a lot of the characters that I create are people I read about, you know, and stuff that sells, right? So I've been able to I'm not gonna say, you know, do commercial stuff because it's still money and people still look at it like currency art at times, right? But I haven't really ever created a body work that was like street where I'm from, right? Like to show the little boy breaking into the meters, the bipolar mom running out the house naked, right? You know, seeing friends, you know, either prison or jail, you know, just the things that come with the streets, man, right? Which I can really, I don't know if there's too many artists out there that could tell the story of the streets through the brush like I could,
Right.
right? You know, because I literally, man, crawled through them, slept on them, grinded through them, you know? So now that's
Right,
my
you felt
new,
them.
yeah, that's my new thing. You know, it's something that just happened recently, just in like the last week, where I said, okay, it's time to tell the story, right? And I'm seasoned now. I'm a seasoned artist, man. I know my process now. I know how to create quality. And so now it's like, okay, let's take all these things you've learned and now let's open up what's inside you and let it out onto the canvas and see what happens. And so we're just about to get that going, like literally within the next week, you know. I'm about to go in for about a year, you know, just creating all new works. Just, you know, my hope is it'll make you laugh, it'll make you cry, it'll make you think. But for sure, it's going to tell you the truth.
That's good because the truth is timeless.
It's timeless. Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
In 2017, Art Basel, I was there. Me and my wife were there. I don't know if that's the year that we finally caught back up. Was that Art Basel? Because I don't think it was that one because you were in Chicago. I think
it was
when
18.
we connected, you had already had your gallery there in Chicago.
Yeah.
And you were already planning or plotting on opening up in LA.
Yeah. I
Right.
think it was the second one I went to, the second
Yeah.
Art Basel. Because the second Art Basel, I went big. I had just
Yeah.
done Rolls Royce. I took
Yeah,
over
yeah,
the Satai Hotel, took over the hotel. I mean, I was, and you know so one thing about my art career, I'm an independent artist. I'm not signed with no art manager, no art publisher, no gallery. The gallery snubbed me early in my career, so I said, fuck it, and I opened my own, excuse my language, you know?
Yeah, no doubt.
And I'm a hustler and a networker, so I'm like, man, I'll sell more art than the gallery will. Watch me, right? And still don't care about the galleries. Care less, man. You know?
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, why create a dependence where there need not be any? Because you're a hustler, you can create your own situations. A lot of people don't have that.
Yeah. So, but sometimes it could get you in trouble, right? Like with me, when I did that first Art Basel and then went out to Arnold's and had an amazing moment there, then I got the opportunity to do Rolls Royce in Chicago, and I spent, you know, as I'm
The
building
Rolls Royce dealer downtown?
Yeah. Took it over.
That's a nice
smoked
dealership,
it.
man.
Yeah. Crazy.
Tight, but it's nice.
Oh, it was crazy, bro. It was one of the best parties Chicago ever seen. But I spent a little money on it, right? I think I spent like 60 on doing the event because I always pay for my own stuff, right? Because I ain't got no gallery paying for it or this. I got to sell art and then I pay for what I want to do. So here I'm on a run, just getting back from Arnold's. I'm building the gallery on Morgan. I'm about to do Rolls Royce. I do the Rolls Royce and I sell about 120 grand worth of art at the Rolls Royce event, right? And my wife is telling me, hey, baby, let's buy a house, right? You know, we got some money. She says, please. I just dumped a bunch of money into the gallery, just spent a bunch of money on the Rolls Royce event. And she's like, man, come on, please, let's buy a house right now. And I was like, man, nah, we ain't ready, man. I got to put this back into me. And so what do? I throw a big old party in Miami. That's when I saw you down there.
Right. Yeah, we had a ball.
Well, that cost me like $100 to do that party.
Shit.
Yeah. And I didn't sell nothing. I didn't sell nothing, man. I think I sold one piece, man. It was a big party. I just threw a big party, man. You know? And it was just terrible time. And I had my show on a Wednesday, which was the first day of Art Basel. No one's really spending money that day. I know this now, but I didn't know then. I was a novice at the thing and just had my chest out. Ooh, I'm going to just kill this game, right? No, I got humbled quick. You know? And what was interesting about it, though, is that second Art Basel show, it was in LA Magazine, the second best art show of Art Basel, right? Yeah. I mean, I was getting great reviews on it. I was going on all the talk shows. I was in magazines, newspapers, but I didn't sell no art. You know? I'm like, man, what's going on? And then that was the first time I got a little bit of a dose of people that are close to you who are kind of smiling in your demise. Oh, he thought he was going to be a famous artist. Look, he didn't do nothing down there, you know? And I remember it hurt me a little bit, you know, but it was a part of the process and I needed it to happen. Everybody went back to Chicago. My wife went back to Chicago. My friends went back to Chicago. I stayed in Miami, living in a little old $60 a night room at an executive suites crap, you know what I'm saying? And had all this art and didn't know what to do, man. I was even thinking about going to Texas to work on the oil fields. I mean, really, I was all whacked out, you know? And and then what happened? All that media attention, once the holidays passed, I just had to sit and be patient. Once the holidays passed, man, all this media I got, now I'm selling paintings. Boom, 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 boom. And so I stayed down there for like 5 months, man. I was waving to Chicago. I'm down here in the warmth, man. You know what I'm saying? And did well with what happened. It didn't happen that day, but it took some months and it happened, right? So it's like one of the biggest things I think, you know, with my story, I hope that people will be able to take from it is that a lot of times we want instant gratification, right? But nothing is worth having when you could have it instantly, I believe.
That's a fact. Easy come, easy go.
Exactly. When you have to work for it, when you have to put it in, when you have to sweat for it, man, you cherish it now, right?
That's right.
You cherish it because you know what you put into it. You know, people ask me, how do you value your art, right? Because I ask for a lot of money for my art on some pieces. It's because I know what I put into it. And that's where the value is. It's not about how beautiful it looks or if it's oil or acrylic or metal. It's about what I personally put into it with my time, energy, and effort, right? That's how I value it, you know?
That's facts. That's right. So that Art Basel, I remember that. I remember you were kind of stressed, but you kept up a good face, man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
And we had fun, and I remember you staying, you know. And then everything went the way it went, and then you decided to go and open up Da Vinci's gallery in West Hollywood.
Yeah, that was fun. That was fun.
Right.
Yeah, that was a crazy one.
That was on Melrose in La Cienega, right?
Yeah.
I remember that spot. And
oh, that spot was dope, man. That spot was dope.
yeah, it's like 4,000 square feet.
Yeah, it was massive.
It was a big ass spot. It was a big
huge.
deal.
It was huge.
You know what I mean? So you were there for a while, but then something came and kind of interfered with that, doing what it was supposed to do.
Yeah. Well, that's life, right? You know? I mean, so I went out there during the pandemic. So when the pandemic was starting, I knew that Chicago, it's going to be shut down, you know? And so I ended up going to Texas for a minute. And then when things started opening up, I had some contacts in LA that were telling me like, hey, look it, man, come out here. I had some art too. And so that was when I made the decision to go to LA. And I remember my one of my wife's friend's stepdad, on the day we were leaving, grabbed me by my arm. Here it was, a pandemic, riots, and wildfires, right? All going on at the same time. And here I am going to jump in the truck with my family and drive across the country to LA. Like, everyone thought I was crazy. Everyone, but I won't ever forget this, man. We were in the driveway, and her friend's stepdad grabbed my arm and said, what are you doing taking this family out there to LA? You're going to fail. You're going to fail, and you're going to crawl back here, right? I couldn't believe it. This little dude told me that, right? And I remember I said, no. I'm going to LA and I'm going to succeed. And what happened, you know? I go out there, and it was, again, it looked like things were getting real tight. I had a little bit of money saved up, but I realized that LA was real expensive. Ooh. So what I thought I had, man, it didn't last very long at all. And here I got my family out there, and they opened up. I couldn't get nobody, so I ended up renting a house that I turned into a gallery, right?
Right. It's like you and your 6 kids now. You, your wife, your 6 kids.
Well, I got three right now. The other 3 are in Austin. Yeah, and then the one.
Oh, okay.
So here we are. We're in this house, beautiful house. I'm turned into a gallery, but I couldn't get nobody to come to the house because everybody was scared. The COVID had everybody shell-shocked, you know? Here, I'm moving around like, whatever, man. I had some worse things in prison, man. You cats don't know, man. They got some real funky diseases in prison, man.
Foot fungus to knock you off.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I've seen it, man. Dude, get something on it. But anyway, so then all of a sudden they opened up LA for like a week, man. I think it was in early November. And I had to take a chance. So one of my friends had a little mortgage spot down on Ventura in Studio City. And he said, hey, man, you could use my place, put your art up. It's brand new. They could walk through the front and then walk out the back. And so I said, man, I got to do something. So we ended up doing the show, and the landlord who rented me that building, he showed up to the show. Couldn't believe it. And he came up to the house and seen the art, went to the show, and he said, man, you know what? He goes, I love your art. I love your family. I love your story. He said, during the riots, they put out all my windows in my building, and we have new windows in there, but the place is empty. And I'd like you to put your next gallery there. I'm thinking it was going to be like a little hole in the wall place, right? You know, I said, man, I'd love to open up a gallery here. He said, well, here, call me tomorrow and come look at it. And so the first one was on Santa Monica and Cannon in Beverly Hills. It was right there on the corner, Santa Monica and Cannon, across the street from the Beverly Hills sign. I couldn't believe it, man. When I seen the address, and I'm telling my wife, I'm like, man, he's telling me this is the space, Sarah. She's like, well, go look at it. I was like, man, he's going to be asking me for a lot of money. Anyway, I drive down there, and I'm driving with the palm trees. It looked like something out of a movie, you know? And I pull up, and it's this huge spot. And we worked out a deal, and I actually signed the lease on my birthday, November 23rd. Yeah. And I stayed there for like 10 months. And then that's when I jumped to Melrose in La Cienega and stayed there for about almost a year. Yeah. And I made what killed me in LA. I did real well out there. Met some great people, put a good network together. And even during the pandemic, it was tough. But where I made my mistake is I went to Art Basel. The gallery on Melrose, it was pretty expensive, right? Things were opening up, so there wasn't that rent and abatement going on at that time, especially on Melrose and La Cienega, because it's a lot of traffic there. So my rent was a little pricey. And so I always was hustling to pay the rent. And then I had to pay the rent for my apartment. And then I had car payments. And so LA, you can make a lot of money in it, but you're going to spend a lot of money, you know?
Oh, yes.
And that's what I was finding myself in. So, man, I was working 10, 12, 14-hour days to keep up in LA, which taught me LA was a great lesson for me. It taught me how to really get down, you know, and then you're competing with all these other artists. So it really taught me to raise my game, you know? But it was tough. Financially, it was a hard spin. And after about a year doing it, Art Basel was coming up, and I was going to drive across the country and do Art Basel. I think I seen you and Al at that one.
Yep.
I think I seen you at that one. Yeah.
Yep. That was the one.
But that was the one that bounced me out of LA too, right? So
yep.
I ended up the way that I been able to make it as an artist is when I get money, I like to put my bills money away where I could go for 2 or 3 months if I don't sell one painting. That's how I usually like to live, right? LA, in Chicago, it's easy, right? It's not nearly as much. In LA, it was like a whole, like, damn, I'm putting this away. So I had that money put away to last. And so I had to make a decision, either stay in LA and do and keep building, or take off to Art Basel and hit big. And I went out to Art Basel and I spent a lot of money to get out there. And I made some money, but it was almost break even. And so when I came back to LA, I was wiped out. I was tired. I was missing home. I was missing my gallery on Morgan Street. I was missing my mom. And so I just got to the point where I said, you know what? I think I'm gonna go home and reset, you know? And I got here last November, and man, I've smoked it. Chicago's been amazing, man, you know? Chicago's been amazing. Done some really good stuff here. My arts, everything I learned in LA, now I'm doing, but doing in peace, right? I'm not stressing. I'm just creating, you know? And so the next part of my journey is about to kick off, man. You know, you'll see real soon here. Yeah.
That's excellent. That's excellent, bro. So how is Arthur the Third? How's he doing?
He's good, man. He's good. So I got here in like October, November of last year. And around Christmas time, he drives a trash truck. I've been doing it for some years now. Just bought his first home. So proud of him. He actually owns his own home. Shit, he got a home before me. You know what I'm saying? He owns his own place, you know? And but around Christmas, this past Christmas, him and his baby's mom got into it a little bit and they separated, and he was going through a tough time. And I was really worried about him because here it is, you know, he has his good job, he has his house now, and then she leaves and he's just crumbling. I seen it, you know? And so I told him, I said, look it, man, I'm doing a lot of work, so why don't you come into the city once a week and hang out with me for the weekends and help me. I'll teach you how to paint. I'll teach you how to create. And here it is almost a year later, and he's doing amazing things. I've been teaching him how to paint. So the irony in it all with my son now is he's becoming an artist. And a good one. He's creative like me. He's patient like me. You know, he's got his job, got his house, and then he works at night on his art, right? And he'll send me something new he's working on. And the feeling that it gives me, because here was only 15 years ago, he was trying to be like me, printing money. And we ended up in prison together. Now here it is, all these years later, 10 years free from prison, and now he wants to be an artist. And he's pretty good at it. And I'm teaching him all my skills. I'm passing down not the counterfeit knowledge, but the art knowledge that I've been able to acquire over these years, you know? And to see it happening is just like one of the greatest feelings ever, man. It gives me, just yesterday, he sent me a picture of a piece. He's working on a Prince, you know, Purple Rain Prince, right? You know? And I'm like, man, son, I like this, you know? And it got a feel of mine, right? Because I'm his father, right? So there's that. And I wanted to, because I know that through his own trial and error, he's going to create his own process, you know? But that's where we're at now. You know, he's doing great, got a home, got a little baby, got a great job. And now he's creating, he's painting, you know, which is just unbelievable. You know, he was just telling me this morning, he's like, Dad, who would have ever known that we'd still be printing money? Right? Because we still paint on money, right? He said, think about that, Pops. He goes, we're still printing money, man. We're legal, man. You know, I said, you
took the
crazy.
words out of my mouth. You took the words right out of my mouth, brother. That's crazy. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's been the best, bro.
I appreciate everything that you shared with us, man. You know, I love you dearly, brother.
I love you too, man. It's good seeing you,
to be able
bro.
to sit here and have this conversation with you. You know, this is awesome, and I appreciate you taking the time and sharing this with us as honestly and openly if you have. And I think a lot of people will come away with a lot of different lessons out of this. Least of all, how not to go to prison for printing money.
Yeah,
you know, they don't like the competition. Real gangsters don't like the competition.
No competition, dog, man. Yeah. I'm gonna be doing a show in New York, man. The end of March. I got another book coming out called The Last Counterfeiter. Really excited about that book because Whereas the art of making money was just about my counterfeiting, the last counterfeiter is about the counterfeiting, art, life, right? Everything. And I'm gonna do a big show with the book release, a big art show, man. I'd love for you to come to it, man. It'd be great to see you,
man.
there,
You could,
know?
you couldn't keep me
yeah.
away from that, bro. Under no circumstance. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I look forward to
right.
it. Thank you, bro.
Thank you, man.
I appreciate
we
you.
out of here?
We all appreciate you. All right. Yeah. VladTV, Art Williams Jr.
It's a wrap, baby.
It's a wrap.
Hey, thank you, man. I really appreciate this, man.